Welcome back. This is American Jesus, and this is the American Jesus Show. Today, I kind of wanted to speak about one of the biggest problems that I see in the proliferation of the 12-step recovery model is that it seems to, or not seems to, but in actuality, what it does is it removes the responsibility from the individual for just about anything that good that happens, anything that's bad that happens, just completely removes any responsibility. And for me personally, as a self-help or whatever you want to call this type of fellowship, people going there don't need to be told that they're not responsible for anything that they do. I went there for 22 years, and I guarantee you that if something good happened, it was because of God, and if something bad happened, it was because of your disease. All you had to do was go to meetings, work steps, talk to your sponsor, read the literature, do all that stupid shit, and, things would just work out. Heaven forbid you get an education. Heaven forbid you pay your bills on time. Heaven forbid you don't pay your bills on time. Heaven forbid you decide not to go to work that day and go look for another job. All of these actions that actually have real consequences, these things that you can do that can change your life, that can make your life go in different directions, all of these things were always equated to these forces that were outside of your direct ability to interact with. And so I kind of started out by listing a couple of different ways in which responsibility is removed from the member of 12-step fellowships. And one of those is that they are encouraged to have irresponsibility in action. So, like I said before, the so-called positive actions, the staying clean, the graduating from college, the getting married, the having a child, all of these things are attributed to a God, generally Yahweh, in this part of the world, and that Yahweh is the actual individual who is doing all of these good actions. It has nothing to do with the person and the person's choices and the person's ability to affect change in their own life. No, it has to do with this deity or this mystical figure who is controlling their life and giving them these gifts because of their continued involvement into this recovery program. So, of course, if I happen to do negative actions, if I happen to spend a lot of money that I don't have, if I happen to have sex a lot, if I happen to look at pornography, all of these things were equated to my so-called disease. Beyond an irresponsibility in just actions, we have an irresponsibility in feelings. And so due to the fellowship's over-reliance on these mysticisms, their members, in my experience, are unable to control their emotional responses or their emotional states. It's not uncommon for a person with even decades clean to act inappropriately and even violently with little to no provocation. These individuals are not taught how to actively regulate their own emotional states, and they have a tendency to lash out at individuals with little or no regard for even their own created social structure. They even violate the structures that they themselves create inside the fellowship because for some reason they have the ability of a child to control what their emotions make them do. And finally, the worst of all is the irresponsibility in living, because most members have little ability to create a life that they wish themselves to live. They exist in a world where their greatest accomplishments is simply not dying. It is not uncommon for these members to equate being above ground with a good day. But what are the consequences of this? Well, the greatest consequence of all is the overarching sense of severe depression that you come across in the rooms. It's been scientifically proven that the easiest way to depress a person and to depress an animal is something called perceived or learned helplessness. If a person is in pain for a long period of time and feels that regardless of what they do, they will continue to experience pain, they give up. And that giving up is depression. You feel like I have no ability to do anything in my life. I'm doing what I'm being told to do. It makes me miserable. When I try to do my own will, it makes me miserable. Regardless of what I do, I become miserable. This concept that the only thing that I can generally create out of my own will is my own suffering is a little screwed up to tell just about anybody. And that if you didn't go into the fellowship with a lot of mental health issues, you sure as hell are going to have them before too long. This is the number one reason why I tell anybody that 12-step fellowships are to be avoided at all cost. If you want to get better, seek other resources. 12-step fellowships will only aggravate your problem. This inability to have any type of efficacy in your own life creates is this sense of victimhood. Most individuals that you come across in a 12-step fellowship, especially people with a long period of time, have become really attuned at expressing the victimization that they appear to be under. You know, all of this creates an organization of children and an organization of victims. Both children and victims have little responsibility over their own situation, just like what you learn in recovery. Their suffering is something that is being done upon them. Western religions, including Christianity, creates victims. The literature of Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous borrow this idea of suffering as a consequence of some original sin. In AA and NA, the original sin that they discuss is addiction or alcoholism. Something the member bears no responsibility for having, but must suffer the effects of, regardless of his actions. In contrast to the intention of Genesis, where the original sin is actually the acquiring of knowledge, that this sin is the ability to discern between something that is evil and something that is good. Recovery-oriented literature. Recovery-oriented literature is about maintaining a certain level of ignorance. The members must maintain a level of self-inflicted stupidity to not question the lunacy that is found in the literature. The fact that the literature is contributed to and voted on by other members who are no more qualified than the person reading the text is never brought into question, because questions are not encouraged. The fact that the individuals who contribute to the texts often later relapse or die or commit suicide or end up in penitentiaries is never openly discussed. But why, you might ask? Like I'm not reading this off of something. Anywho, we're going to talk about willful ignorance. Willful ignorance has a large, basic, overarching benefit. One of the attributes of children that puts them at an advantage over members of 12-step fellowships is that they are ignorant due to lack of experience. Most children are, in fact, very curious and will hound people with questions about how things work or why things are the way they are. Children understand that human beings can only affect their will on their world to the extent that they understand that world. In striking contradiction, addicts and alcoholics are uncomfortable around questions. They rarely ask the most rudimentary questions about this, quote, life-saving process, unquote. The collective itself has developed strategies to discourage questions, to shame those who wish to look deeper into the literature for meaning. Why? Well, Because like the kiddie pool at Hurricane Harbor, things meant for children cannot be too deep. Just like a child without floaties, if a member of a 12-step organization finds he cannot touch bottom, he may panic and drown. But also like children in the kiddie pool, 12-step members rarely learn how to swim. Their reliance on the bottom of the pool precludes a need for the individual to learn how to navigate through water. In the fellowship, this analogy is equated to navigating their own life. When a member who is inquisitive begins asking questions about the program, it is as if he is digging away at the bottom of the pool. And the people in the fellowship who have become very complacent with touching bottom become very uncomfortable very quickly. I know, that's a lot of varies, but there's a lot of varies. They will do whatever they can to stop this person from digging. And yet, to thoroughly destroy this metaphor, these same people would complain about the fact that they are unhappy in the kiddie pool, that things seem to happen without reason. Why do bad things happen to good people? They may cry. That is until the member reminds them that they are the creators of this, quote, good and bad, unquote, system. That they themselves decide what is good and bad and then complain about what is good and bad. This concept or this idea is too complex for members of the kiddie pool society to fully digest. But this doesn't make any sense, does it? Why would somebody want to be stupid? Most people want to know things, right? Well, that's not true. Ignorance has its payoff. But what is the big payoff? Well, let's look at a cashier who never learns how to add or subtract. Can this person ever really be blamed for doing a job poorly? Yes. Yes, they can. Now, you can blame the employer for hiring such an individual who has no knowledge of rudimentary mathematics, but the individual himself can also take it upon himself to go out and learn the required skills to effectively cashier. But shit, should the cashier do such a thing, they suddenly can be held responsible for the effectiveness they have at their job. If an individual all of a sudden learns how to add and subtract, then you can basically hold them accountable for adding and subtracting incorrectly. This also holds true with 12-step fellowships. This also can be said for the members of the 12-step fellowship and their activities in the world. The more one learns about the world, the more they ask questions and seek answers, the more they have to take responsibility for their own lives. If they feign ignorance, how could I have known? How could I have known this individual would have overdosed? Gee, I don't know, because it happens all the frickin' time in your damn fellowship, so maybe there's something that needs to be looked at. Well, if we look at it, then we have to take responsibility for it. But if we ignore it, or if we say it is impossible to be understood, we are not responsible, because only God can understand the complexities of drug addiction. So if the person investigates the idea of a God that has so-called plan and correctly determines that there is no real evidence of such a plan, they are suddenly responsible to create their own plan. And then they're responsible for the efficacy of said plan. Who wants that? I do. I want to be in control of my own life. American Jesus is the one who decided to create American Jesus. American Jesus is the person who decided to make videos. American Jesus is the person who decided to waste 22 years of his life inside a fellowship only to come out and realize what a waste of time it is. But that's okay if I take responsibility for that. The shirking responsibility has been a companion of humanity since the very beginning. And that brings us to the great analogy. Is addiction and alcoholism the new Satan? This is what I will close on for you to ponder. Most people find the concept of a satanic presence running around the globe creating mischief as at best far-fetched. The idea of addiction is just the most current incarnation of this so-called Lord of Lies. The similarities between the mythical creature with horns and a tail to the imagined disease of addiction or allergy of alcoholism is countless. But let's just pick out a couple of my favorites. Satan is out to kill you. Your disease is out to kill you. Satan lies to you. Your disease lies to you. Satan is more powerful than you are. Your disease is more powerful than you are. Only through God, and in this case, Yahweh, can we defeat Satan. Only through God, and in most cases, Yahweh, can we defeat your disease. And so on and so forth until everything is terrible. And then they go, this is spiritual, not religion, because we changed a word and replaced it with another imaginary, invisible word that has no proof. You see, it's plain as day. And what do the people say who do not believe in Satan? Why, they say that the greatest trick that the devil ever pulled is to convince you that Satan didn't exist. Huh, that sounds familiar. This is the only disease that will tell you you do not have it. Holy fuck, that's amazing. And that, my friends, is the greatest mind fuck that every religion must have as its cornerstone. They have to have one catch-all, some concept that cannot be disputed on the basis of logic, because on its surface, it's paradoxical. And a paradox is not actually illogical. It is merely so convoluted that there's no way to talk about it intelligently and come to a conclusion. And that is its purpose. To stop all the questioning stuff. Here, something to ponder. It's a paradox that you can just play with all day long because it doesn't go anywhere. And yet most people, most reasonable people, when they come to a paradox such as this, they see it as the death of an idea. If an idea requires a paradox to exist, then the idea that relies on the paradox probably doesn't exist. Otherwise, it wouldn't have to exist inside of a paradox. If this type of convoluted mess is the only thing holding your religion together, then it is most likely based on a lie. The lie that the paradox proves anything. The paradox is intended to explain anything. So the next time you question the disease model and the person responds with, "That's only your disease talking," the only correct response is, "Nope, that's my mouth talking. How the fuck is my disease supposed to be talking? My brain forms words. These words are created by the use of my lungs and my vocal cords. And that, my friend, is how human beings communicate ideas. And if we cannot agree on what talking is, then I fear for the remainder of this discussion. Because what you just said, that's my disease talking, means nothing. It was like you just did a big old fart out your mouth. Big old fart out your mouth. So next time, before you speak, really think about this. Really think with your brain and ask yourself, is what I'm about to say communicating a reasonable idea? Or is it just a big old mouth fart? Here's to mouth farts. 22 years of mouth farts, ladies and gentlemen. That's what I heard. 22 years of mouth farts with the occasional hug that actually was intended to be a hug. The rest of them were intended to be a method for indoctrination. Sad, 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 I know. But I do want to thank you. I know it's been a while since I posted something. I post when I can. I post when I have something to say. But I do want to thank you. This has been American Jesus. I want to encourage you to like and subscribe and hit that bell notification. Hit the notification bell if you like what I have to say, because then when I do post something, you'll get a notification. It's obviously that you're not going to get a lot of them from me, but you will get them occasionally when I do post something. If you think I'm suck, that's what I just said. If you think I'm suck. If you think everything I said was just dumb, then I encourage you to comment, because I guarantee you what you're going to comment will be hysterical, because you have no idea what I was saying. And that's funny. And so please put it in the comments so that we can all laugh at you, because we're not laughing at you. Oh, wait, no. Yeah, we're totally laughing at you because you're dumb and you have no idea what you're talking about. And what just came out of your mouth was stupid. Stupid. Like, without any type of brains involved. Which, ironically enough, is actually the sign of a cult. But we already talked about that. But please, whoever wants to like, comment, vote me up, vote me down, vote me all around, and subscribe and hit that notification bell so when I do post, you'll actually get something. And if you don't hit that notification bell, then that's your disease talking. And so you need to hit that notification. God, when I was in marketing, I wish I had had a product like this to market. I mean, where you just don't actually have to have a product. You just use these marketing to market, and then they can't attack the product because the product doesn't actually exist. And so it's like, oh yeah? Well, that's because you don't know any better, that you think I have no product. But if you were smarter, then the emperor's wearing clothes. So this has been American Jesus, and those things back there were my opinions.
And you're taunting me! And you're taunting me! Stop it! Stop it! Stop it! Stop it right now! Stop it! Stop it right now! I'm just a little kid. Other side is something big. That what you did would bring you back to this.